Welcome back, everybody, to the OPT Network. This morning, as we continue to celebrate amazing women doing amazing things, we would be remiss if we didn't speak to educators, those people who are really on the grind, shaping and molding our youth. Our guests this morning are Mrs. Renisha Beaudion, principal at Julius Patrick 6th grade Academy, and Miss Shannon McCue. She is the assistant principal at Alexandria Middle Magnet. Ladies, good morning and welcome.
Good morning.
Good morning.
It's great to have you guys, and I mean it. I think that there is a special place for people who love what they do in educating children and shaping and molding the future. And so let me start with you, Miss Renisha. Talk about why you went into education. Why did you want to be a teacher?
I've always wanted to be a teacher. As a child, of course, like many young children, I played school a lot. And Miss McCue actually reminded me, and I do not remember this, but Miss McCue and I were in second grade together.
Quit it! Y'all were in second grade together?
Yes, I knew second grade, but she oftentimes talked about how I would pick up on things. And I guess I never really paid attention to it, but I would pick up on the academics kind of fast. And so academics has always been my passion. So I thought I wanted to go into the medical field because that's what girls want to be, nurses. Mm-hmm. And so I had a patient that actually passed away while I was in nursing school. And I quickly realized, okay, this is not for me. Mm-hmm. And I realized that education has always been the premise of my background, and it guided me in everything that I did. And I'm actually, I would call myself a living testimony because my mother had me when she was 15. And so when I just started teaching, I realized that I was able to be that person that would say, okay, that's me. That's me. I'm from Lower Third too. That's me. Mm-hmm. And so I've always, I just like educating others.
And so your mom, being a teen mom, did she have to stop her education, or was she able to continue? And how does she make that impartation into you that education is important?
She finished, but I was raised by my grandmother. Mm-hmm. So from 3 or 4 days, my grandmother raised me, my grandmother and my grandfather. And my grandmother was in the school system. She was she started off as a cafeteria worker, and she ended up as a cafeteria manager. So I saw the hard work, and just I would go to school with her and her kids and be around her kids. So I've just always been in that education arena. My grandmother would often laugh at when I was a little kid, 3 and 4 years old. I would get into bed with my grandfather and read the newspaper like I was really reading the newspaper. So she would often say that she knew I was going to be a teacher because she said I would be bossy. But I
those are called leadership skills today.
Leadership skills. Yeah.
And so, Ms. McCue, for you, why did you want to be a teacher?
Well, in actuality, my story is similar to Ms. Beaudion, and I still laugh today. I tell many of my teachers in training about the fact that she and I shared the second grade classroom together.
How did you remember that? How did you remember that?
Because she was so dynamic.
In the second grade.
In the second grade, the teacher could call out any math fact, addition, subtraction, and she was calling it out just like that. Uh-huh. And I remember, and I tell my teachers this all the time, because one of the things I do here in my role is train teachers to become strong instructional teachers. Our second grade teacher, and I don't know if Ms. Beaudion remembers this, but she would always say, close your eyes and picture it when we talked about math. So if the math fact was 2 + 2 = 4, she said that we would be able to close our eyes and picture it. And so I tell the teachers every time she said that, I would close my eyes and see absolutely nothing. But Ms. Beaudion,
she would see the answer.
Ms. Beaudion evidently could see everything. And so I use that as a segue to bring about the point that everybody doesn't learn in the same way.
Mm-hmm.
And so back to your original question, why did I want to become a teacher? One, understanding that everybody doesn't learn the same way.
Mm-hmm.
And you need professionals that can point that out, because those are some craft or tricks to the trade that we learn along the way outside of the formalized instruction that we get in college.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing I wanted to do was show that as a Black woman, you can be a teacher and make it, because the hype when I was growing up was, oh, if you be a teacher, you won't make any money. They don't make any money. But it's way past that, because teaching, in my opinion, is absolutely the greatest profession that it is, because every great person that you would think of was George Washington, or you just referred to Obama, or the author of the book that you were talking about. They had a great teacher that gave them the background, the skills,
That
and the
gives me
knowledge to
chills. That's
become
right.
successful.
Mm-hmm. And there was a great teacher there that encouraged all of us to become what it is that we're doing today, or a great teacher that spoke into our lives and into everybody's life. I think as you think of teachers, there's not one single person that on their journey through education that there wasn't at least one somebody that spoke something into your life that has stayed with you forever.
Yep.
And for me, that was my second grade teacher. Funny you would mention the second grade. My second grade teacher was just so incredibly important. And so as we celebrate women and Women's History Month, we want to celebrate, I wish we could celebrate every teacher, because I think that every teacher that really has a passion and a love for educating kids is so critically important to this generation. And so talk about, Ms. McCue, when you say, I think that's critical. Back then, when you were in second grade, and then I'm probably a little bit older than you all, we didn't know about different ways to teach. There was only one way. We didn't understand that kids learn differently. We're going to take a break here, but when we come back, I want to talk about how to meet each child where they are for optimal learning. This morning, we're celebrating educators. Stay on point. We're back right after this. Welcome back, everybody, to the OPT Network. This morning, we're celebrating educators, principals and vice principals and teachers, and people who really do the work to make sure that our kids become all that they can be. Our guest this morning is Ms. Renisha Beaudion. She's the principal at Julius Patrick 6th Grade Academy. And Ms. Shannon McCue, she's the assistant principal at Alexandria Middle Magnet. And so during the break, we were talking about those moments that really impact us. And before we went to break, we were talking about only maybe one learning style. So what did you learn about the way that kids learn, Ms. Beaudion?
I learned that when the parent sends their kids to us, they send us their absolute best. And so with that being said, regardless of how they learn, they can learn. The end point is that every child can learn. It may not be at the same pace. It may not be at the same rate. It may not even be the same way, but they all can learn. So I tell my daughter, I don't know why you're not getting this, because I can put my fingers in my ear and I can hear it, and I'm getting it. So I'm an auditory learner. Mm-hmm. She's the type, I can see her doing this tapping. And so that kinesthetic type of learning. So you just have different learning styles, and we have to reach these kids, because I tell my educators that teach all of my scholars here at Julius Patrick that they can learn, they will learn when they leave here. And these parents are sending us their best, best. And I'm saying, okay, I want this child to go here. I want this child to go there. They're sending us their absolute best. And they expect for us to teach them and meet them where they are. Mm-hmm. And so regardless of where they are, our goal is always to get them to grade level. So we celebrate growth. We celebrate small growth. We celebrate large growth, because we want our students to know that what they're doing is enough. Mm-hmm. And we have to meet them where they are and get them to where they need to be.
So for you, Ms. McCue, and I had asked another educator this, in fact, your principal, how do we How do we not label children? Because all too often, kids get labeled and they get labeled early. And once that label is attached to them, it's very hard to break that label.
Children are labeled at a young age, but how do we break that? It kind of goes back to what Ms. Beaudion said, all kids can learn. But I always take it a step further with that same statement. All kids can learn, and also all kids want to learn. In the 14, 15 years that I've been in this profession, I haven't met one student that shows up every single day with the intent that I'm just coming to school because I have to. I don't want to learn anything. And oftentimes what happens is because we have different learning styles, unique needs, if we are being trained rather as a student under a teacher that's not familiar with that key principle there, that everyone learns different, then oftentimes the student can be labeled. What that would look like is and sound like inside of the classroom, that's the kid in the back. That's the kid that the teacher might not call on. Or if she does call on him or her, it's for the easier questions. She's not going to push that student further because everyone in the class, or sometimes maybe one or two, may catch it in the style that the teacher is delivering that instruction. The teacher feels like everyone else that misses it just has to rise up to the level. Like that saying, cream rises to the top.
Right.
But in actuality, in education, that's not true at all.
Oh, wow. So the teacher, instead of saying, okay, the ones that didn't get it, it's their problem. In other words, that teacher because there's so many kids, then how do you go back and get the cream that doesn't rise to the top?
Exactly. And so one of the methods that we like to use here at Alexandria Middle Magnet is centered around a process called data teams process. And in that process, we begin by giving each and every student a diagnostic assessment in reading and also math. And what it does is it tells us what the students are strong in and what the students are weak in. And now the tests have become so advanced and specialized to where they can even give us a grade level as to indicate what level the students are performing on in that moment of time. So for instance, I can have a 7th grade student that takes the math diagnostic, which is originally issued out at the 7th grade level. And by the time they finish, all of the data shows me that this student is performing on a 5th or 6th grade level.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. And the same thing with reading.
And then how do we, Ms. Beaudion, how do we get them there without making them feel ostracized? Because I was that kid, right? That I couldn't close my eyes and see the math problem.
Right.
And I was the one in that class that felt like everybody can get it but me. How do we help those kids?
Those educators, they have to want it for these kids just as much as these kids want it for themselves. So their instruction, like Ms. McCue said, is based on the data. And from there, they have to use those instructional strategies that they're taught. They have to use those strategies that when they were in school, what worked for them. You know, we have to get back to the basics of things. Everybody want to talk about the programs and this, but it's just pure, just teaching. Mm-hmm. And they can learn with us teaching. And so we have to be invested in their learning. This cannot be a check. You can't worry about this school closing, that school closing. You can't worry about, and when they come into Julius Patrick, our students go through so much over the weekend. They go through so much in the afternoon. It's so much other than reading, writing, science, and social studies on their mind. So we have to make sure that they know this is a comfort zone. This is a safe zone. Whatever happened this weekend in the neighborhood, that's not going to affect us teaching you. We love you. And so we do what we have to do. This is a mission. I tell everybody, this is not your job. When you step in this door, this is not just a job, because you can go do anything and make a check. This is a mission. This is your story.
It's a calling. Isn't it a calling?
a calling. It's a definite
It's a calling.
Mm-hmm.
And
you
it's absolutely a calling.
And you both agree on that. When did you know, Miss McCue and Miss Beaudion, when did you know it was a calling? That it wasn't just a job, it wasn't just a paycheck?
I knew that this was a calling when my first student was murdered. I think I lost my mind because I felt like, what could we have done different? And I have seen so many of my students lose their life that have taken others' lives. I read about my students all the time. I feel like it's my child because I grew with this child. This child grew with me. It's almost like we grew up together. I started teaching them in the 6th grade and they ended up in the 8th grade. And so losing a student was like losing a family member. Wow. And they say that, okay, you just have them for this moment, but it's more than that. Mm-hmm. And I knew that. I realized, okay, this is more than that. And it hurts so bad to lose a student, and you don't want that to happen. So when I see a child that I took in the 6th grade, I take students all the time. We didn't go this year because of COVID, but every year I've taken a group of students to Grambling's High School Day. Of course, I'm partial to Grambling, mm-hmm. but I would take them to High School Day. And I introduced them in the 6th grade. They would go with me in the 7th grade, in the 8th grade. And then Miss Ingrid, she would have a group that would go in the 9th and 10th. And so when I see those same students that started going with me in the 6th grade run up to me at a Grambling homecoming and say, Miss Beaudion, I'm at Grambling 9 and I started going with you. Or I was in a traffic circle and one of my students, I was like, oh my God, I'm about to be robbed. But a student got out of his car, ran up to my car. I thought I didn't know what was going on. And he was like, look, Miss Beaudion, I got a scholarship to Grambling to play football. Those type of things, mm-hmm. I realized, okay, this is not a job. This is my calling because I'm making an impact on these kids' lives so they could be productive citizens. So I don't have to bury another one of my students.
Wow. Let's take a break here. But when we come back, we'll talk about your calling, Miss McCue, and all that our educators are doing to shape and mold this generation and make them better. Stay on point. We're back with more right after this. Welcome back, everybody, to the OPT Network as we celebrate amazing women doing amazing things in our community, in our state, and in our world. We really have to take a closer look at our teachers and their hearts and their heart for the youth and for molding and shaping their possibilities. And so before we went to break, Ms. McCue, we were talking about your calling. When did you know that education would be your calling?
I think my story is really similar, like I said, to many who grow up playing school, getting ready, I guess we would say. My dad still to this day said, I knew you was in that room getting ready for something, but we just didn't know what it is. Uh-huh. He said that when I told him I had been named the assistant principal. Mm-hmm. But when did I know it was a calling? When I started out teaching, and I've always taught in at risk, every year I taught, for the most part, test and grade. And so the big assessment that the students have to take to promote is the LEAP assessment. Mm-hmm. And I always set a goal. This year, I'm going to exceed the goal that I set last year. So for quite some time, we're just teaching the standard curriculum and using the standard strategies for instruction that were prescribed by the curriculum. I always hit half, or 50-50 mark. 50% of my students would become successful and go on to the next grade, and then 50% they would have to remediate, go to summer school. Mm-hmm. And eventually I said, this is not it. This is not it. There has to be something else. And so that caused me to go back to school and get a master's and kind of develop my craft to learn little bit more about reading strengths and weaknesses and how to improve on it. But also a lot of action research happened inside of the classroom. And so I guess the biggest thing was my calling. One year I had a student come in. It was the beginning of the 4th grade year. And she said, Miss McCue, I'm so nervous about 4th grade this year. She said, I've taken this LEAP test twice. She said, I'm supposed to be in the 6th grade this year. And I said, well, I tell you what, You can come to absolutely the right place. And I can promise you that by the end of this year, you will pass that LEAP test. And so at the end of the year, it was not only her, but the entire class that passed the LEAP test. And she cried and I cried. We all cried because she said, I couldn't believe it. And even when the student went on further, she always kept in contact through another teacher through Facebook to tell me the message, I wish my teachers now were like you. And so I think for me at that point, when I made the promise and kept it to a student that expressed that she had concern, had struggled with it, that's when I knew it was a calling.
Wow. One of the things that you both talked about were at-risk students. And all too often, we see many Black and brown students who are at risk, who don't have, in many cases, the family support or even the community support to be successful in school. Because Ms. Beaudion, you mentioned it earlier, what happens on the weekend, what happens away from school is a real weight that these young people are carrying. How do we help them put that down to come to school and learn when they've got so many other things happening?
Well, the big thing I tell my teachers, we can't love them into failure. So as much as we want to coddle them,
we can't love them into failure.
We cannot love them into failure. And what I mean is, we can't coddle them. We can't tell them, you don't have to do this because I know you went through this. I tell everybody, look at me. My mother was 15. So when they come in and say, well, he had this, check. That's me. Well, we're living in this house with this other family member. Yep, that's me. We have to let them know these things are only making you stronger. We have to prepare them for the next level. We have to prepare them for real world. And real world are all of those other things that's on their shoulders and weighing on their hearts and that they experienced that weekend or yesterday or that morning. My kids walk to school and they'll see a dead body. And Ms. Beaudion, I saw a dead body this morning. I'm like, oh my God. Like, I didn't see a dead body until I was a big girl.
Right.
And these little kids are seeing dead bodies. And it's just so much they go through. But we still can't love them into failure. We have to prepare them for real world. They got to get an education. McDonald's are hiring college educated people. So this is our problem. I hear people trying to blame different people about what's going on in our city and the high crime rates and this person's to blame, this person's to blame, this person's to blame. You know, I say as an educator, I'm the blame because I see so many of our kids, they get put out of school. I saw a kid get put out of school for not having his name badge, his ID badge. I walked into school for something else and it was a lot of kids and they didn't have their name badge on. And I said, hold up. I ran to my car. I said, how much is the name badge? Can we print out a name badge? Yeah, but he never had this name badge. He was getting expelled for a name badge.
He was getting expelled for a name badge?
For a name badge. I ran to my car and I got some money. I said, I need him in school. This is $20. Every time he forget his name badge, take it out of this. And let me know when you need some more because this little boy was murdered. He got put out of school for something else, I think, not a name badge, but he ended up getting put out of school and he was murdered. He was murdered. And all I could think about, I saw so much potential in him. And when he was murdered, it just took me out. It just took me to a dark place because I was so angry because if he would have stayed in school, he was an athlete. If he would have stayed in school, he could have done something with himself. I just feel that he could have done something with himself. And so I just feel like we can't coddle them, but we have to understand them. And having experience and being them, I tell them all the time, I am you. I'm you. I'm a Black female from the whatever you want to call them, from Lower Third. I'm from Williamson Street. I tell these students all the time, a lot of the murders you hear about come from off Williamson Street. I grew up on Williamson Street. My grandmother and grandfather, my father was in jail. So all your stories that you're telling me have lived it. So I understand it, but I also know what it took in order for me to get out of that situation. It took me getting my education. It took me graduating number 4 in my class in order to get a scholarship to go to college, because I get it. My grandmother and grandfather probably wouldn't have been able to afford it for me to go to college. I got a scholarship. I went to school with my master's with a scholarship. There are opportunities, and I want them to know that. And so if I can reach one, if I can teach one, reach one and teach one, I feel like I've done my job. And just seeing those success stories, you can't even imagine what it feels like just to see those success stories.
Wow. Let's take a break here. But when we come back, we'll have some of Mrs. McCue's success stories and her reason why our at-risk students exude possibility if we just care enough. Stay on point. We're back right after this. Welcome back, everybody, to the OPT Network. As we continue our celebration of Women's History Month, there are no more powerful women than our educators, those people who are in the trenches with our future, with our children, really cheering them on and loving them enough to stand by and tell them that they are possible, education is possible, and there are no limits. And so before we went to break, Ms. McCue, we were talking about those at-risk kids and your why for, because when you become an educator, let's face it, you can choose to go and teach wherever you want. And you made a decision that you would teach these children who many people maybe think are not as teachable as others. Mm-hmm. Why?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. When I think about it, and you're absolutely right, all of us as educators, we have had more than multiple times to be able to teach in multiple places. But I think the fact that I got my first job in an at-risk setting, and when I got a chance to actually see some of the things that the students were in fact going through, that bought and sold me. Simply because I kind of related to some of the students in that I had my daughter at 19. I was a single mother. And along the way through college, I did go to college. It took me a little bit longer.
Who was the driver? Who was the driver to say, you're a teen mom, but your possibility didn't stop there?
I can simply say that one mistake doesn't define the person. And I'd always had a drive and a passion like Ms. Beaudion. I had graduated in the top of my class from high school, and I continued to go to school. But some of the jobs that I had to take along the way to support myself through college, I worked as a certified nursing assistant. Mm-hmm. I worked as a cashier in the gas station. I had some of the, not always the pretty jobs, I'll say that, but I did have my daughter, and I knew that I needed to work on my goals so that we would be able to have some sort of livable life so that it wouldn't be tough always. And so when
how did you stay motivated? Because those jobs are jobs that they are hard jobs.
They absolutely are hard jobs, but you find something in all of them because all of them are centered around people. And you get to see that even though things may be a little bit difficult for you, in the words of my mom, someone is always having it a little bit worse. Huh. But even in those jobs, even as a nurse assistant, I fell in love with the patients. Mm-hmm. As a cashier in the gas station, I got to know some of the customers. I would know what they wanted before they ever even came in. So you always find some parts of it, I guess for me, just working with people. And so when we're switching into education, seeing little people, are developing people, and the idea of knowing that I can do something now to kind of prevent you from going through some of those rough patches, working in some of those difficult jobs, making sure that those are not the only options that you have, but you have a plethora of options. And if you choose to work in that capacity, you can do so, but maybe at a different level, maybe not as a nurse assistant, but maybe as the RN to grow and develop into the DON. I wanted the students to see, and I still want them to see, that they can do anything that they put their heart and minds to. That's what the parents tell their students in other areas. And I feel like over here in at risk, maybe they don't hear that so much. So I not only try to make it my mission to tell them, but to also show them, not with just education, what's in the textbooks, but also by my action, by the example that I set for them. And so I think that that's the biggest rather contributor to my success story, my hard times.
Wow.
My hard times was what pushed me to stand here in front of them and try to push them young. Because it's not just, really and truly, it's not just being smart. You're going to have to be smart to make it through college, but you do have to be able to persevere. You do have to be able to withstand in struggles, push through, stay motivated, focus. And so those are some of the things that I like to exude in my daily practice.
Wow. Last words for you, Ms. Beaudion. What an incredible conversation.
My last words would be to any mother, to any child, to any grandparent, anyone that has a child. Encourage your child. Speak life into your child. We're doing it here. Continue to do what we're doing it at the schools. When you send your child to a school that they are loved, know that we're not going to love them into failure. However, we are going to discipline them. We are going to tell them right from wrong, but we need your support. We need you to back us because in the end, your goal is our goal. We want to see successful, call it like it is, African American females and male students. We work, like Miss McCue said, we work at these schools because we want to, not because we have to. We want to. We want to make an impact on our community. We have a story, and we want you to have a story, and we want you to be able to tell your story. So we do what we do, not because we have to, because we want to.
Powerful. Thank you so much for shaping and molding and being a guiding light to so many people, so many little people that will hopefully grow up and realize their potential and their possibility. Thank you so much for all that you're doing. Hey, everybody, stay on point. We're back right after this.